Eduyos, Aleph Hey. And why do we mention the opinions of an individual among the majority? Since in any case, the halakha does not accord with him, but rather with the opinion of the majority. So if a court will form the opinion of the individual and rely on him, then a subsequent court will not be able to nullify the verdict of his fellow court unless it is greater than the first court in wisdom and in number. If the latter was greater than the former in wisdom, but not in number, or in number and not in wisdom, it is not able to nullify the decision of the former court unless the latter is greater in number and in wisdom. Rabbi Yehuda said, and if so, why do we mention the opinions of an individual among the majority for nothing? So that if a person will say, thus have I received as a tradition, one will be able to answer him, it is in accordance with the words of so-and-so that you have heard. Beis Shammai said a quarter kav of bones transmits tumah from the bones, whether from 2 or 3. But Beis Hillel says a quarter kav of bones transmits tumah only when they come from the bones of a single corpse, from the majority of the structure, or from a numerical majority. Shammai says even from one bone.
Okay, switch subject again. Now what we're doing over here, the common thread binding the Mishnahs that we're reading now is where Shammai himself says something different than what Beis Shammai says. Okay, so karshinei truma. So karshinim are vetches. It's a kind of a legume which is usually eaten only by animals, but the bekoshi when people are hungry they'll eat them. Right? So. And the relevance of this is that because we're talking about truma, so when they're truma, there's a concern that you want to keep them tahor, because if a human's going to eat it, in other words, a kohen going to eat it, then he has to eat it b'tara. But if he's going to feed it to his animals, which is the normal usage of kashinim, then he doesn't have to worry about whether it's tameh or not. Okay, so the question is in the preparation, because there are a bunch of things that you got to do to the vetches before you feed them to anyone. You've got the three. There's this. You got to soak them, you got to rub them, and then you feed them. Okay. So Beis Shammai says you soak them and you rub them in tahara because there's still a chance that they might be fed to people. But if you're already at the stage where you're about to put it in the animal's trough, then you don't have to worry about whether you're tahor or not. Just put it into the animal's trough and let it become tameh, and it's fine. Okay. Beis Hillel omrim shorin b'tara. You only have to soak it b'tara because that's the point where when it becomes wet. By the way, that's of course when it becomes susceptible to tumah. But you know that. Okay. But when you already get up to the stage of rubbing them, that means it's not going to be for human consumption after that, which means don't worry about it. Then it can become tameh. Shammai himself says Shammai omer ye'achalu tzarid, that they should be eaten dry. Just because he's more machmir than his talmidim, and he says that don't get them wet at all, because they shouldn't become tameh at all. And Rabbi Akiva takes the exact opposite view. He says, forget about it. If it's designated for animals, then just go ahead and do everything b'tumah.
So if it keeps it dry, it's not going to contaminate. It's not going to get contaminated. If it keeps it dry.
That's right. If he keeps it dry, then it will never become contaminated. Okay, and that is and the halakha follows Beis Hillel. All right, now switching subjects again to Ma'aser Sheni, and we're going to have two Mishnahs today that are both on the subject of Ma'aser Sheni, just the opposite ends of the same transaction. So if somebody is going to Yerushalayim with Ma'aser Sheni, so the typical thing that you do is you redeem your produce onto coins, because it's a lot easier to take coins than produce. Okay, so the actual literal Ma'aser Sheni is redeemed onto coins. You take the coins to Yerushalayim, and then you buy your produce in Yerushalayim. Okay, now the question is, you've got a whole bunch of so he's got a whole bunch of copper coins from various things. He's been throughout the year, he's been redeeming things onto various copper coins and keeping them in a little pouch. He's now got this big fat pouch of copper coins, and he wants to just change it into a silver coin, which is also legitimate. You're allowed to do that, because it will make it easier for him to carry it to Yerushalayim. Now the question comes: how much of it are you allowed to change? and we'll see why this is a question now as we go through the opinions. Beis Shammai omrim b'chol hasela maos. So he says change. So Beis Shammai say change the entire thing into silver. B'chol hasela maos. Hold on. Maos and
It says for an entire seller, change the copper.
So the entire seller's worth he can turn he can turn into silver coins, right? Because because he wants to he wants to minimize on the amount that he has to spend in brokerage. Right. Just one transaction, and don't waste your money on the brokerage. This says no. Half of it put into silver, half of it put into keep in copper. Why does he say that? Because he says what's going to happen? People are coming into Yerushalayim for the Chag, and if everyone does what Beis Shammai says, and everyone's walking in with silver, and you're going into the shops, and the shops, like I don't know, they like exact change. They're buying stuff with copper. So now everyone's going to descend on the money changers tables, and they're going to say, "Oh, high demand, let's push up the price." Mm-hmm. So then suddenly people are going to lose money on the exchange rates. They say, arrive in Yerushalayim with some copper and change the rest of the silver at your leisure, so that you don't create pressure on the money changers and push the prices up. Okay. Rabbi Meir Omer ein mechalelin kesef u'peres ala kesef v'chachamim materin. So Rabbi Meir says, what happens if you've got a half a shekel? Is that right? A dinar. Half a dinar's worth of silver and half a dinar's worth of peros, and you want to redeem put them together and make them into one silver dinar. Okay. So Rabbi Meir doesn't like that idea, because the general rule is that you can't redeem silver on silver. That's you're allowed to redeem it in one direction and redeem it back in the other direction, but to redeem like two half dinar coins onto one dinar coin, everyone agrees is not allowed. But if you've got a half dinar and a half dinar of peros, well, peros you are allowed to do. So once you're doing the peros, you're allowed to do the silver as well, according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir doesn't allow that. Okay. So now this Mishnah by itself doesn't actually have doesn't seem to be relevant to the stream of Mishnayos that we're learning, but it's relevant because now Mishnah Yud comes back to the theme of where Shammai disagrees from his Talmidim. Okay, and Mishnah Yud is also quoted pretty much straight out of Maseches Maaseh Sheni. And this is where where it's relevant to our theme. Okay. So now we get to the other end of the equation. He's arrived in Yerushalayim and he's got a silver coin, and he wants to change it so that now he can buy stuff. Remember, on the way in, they said you could change all of your copper into silver. Now they're saying you can change all of your silver back into copper, so you can go and spend it. Okay. No, they say, once again, you got to think this through, because what happens if he doesn't spend it all? Okay. If he doesn't spend the entire shekel, then he's going to have a bunch of copper coins left over, which he now is kind of stuck with, and he's going to go home and he's going to leave them aside until the next time he comes to Aliyah L'Regel. And meanwhile, copper can corrode and rust, and then you're going to lose your money. So change it slowly, change it as you need it, because silver will keep better. Hadanim lifnei chachamim omrim. Now who's the hadanim lifnei chachamim? So this is Shimon ben Azai and Shimon ben Zoma, and Hanan HaMitzri and Hanani ben Chachinai, according to the Gemara. Okay, so they agree with Hillel that you shouldn't change everything. They just disagree about how much. Okay, yeah. So they say 3 dinars of silver and 1 dinar of mouse. Remember, a seller is 4 dinars. Mm. So 3/4 should stay in silver. They say, and only a small amount should become copper. Rabbi Kibbel maybe shlosha dinar in kesef or b'revius kesef or revius mouse. So again, same principle, different machlokes as to how much should be kept in copper. So Rabbi Akiva is saying even like 7/8 must stay in silver, and only the 1/8 must be copper. Rabbi Tarfon says Arba Aspere Kesef, and he has a shir called Asperim, and Rambam says I have no idea what an aspar is. So this is Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. We don't know exactly what he meant by it, but ultimately it comes down to the same principle that Beis Hillel said: don't change everything, leave some over. How much is it? Ask Rabbi Tarfon to explain it to you if you decide to hold like him. And Shammai. Badabum, here comes the drum roll. We've been waiting for Shammai all the time because that's why we're learning this in Eduyos. He says, forget about changing the money. Open an account with the shopkeeper. Put your silver shekel down and buy on the basis of what's in your account. Let him deduct whatever you're spending, and then he'll give you change at the end. And that's it. And that's in that way, you don't have to worry about brokerage. You don't have to worry about carrying your coins about, getting them lost, or anything like that. Just open an account at the shop. Okay. Again, the halacha follows Beis Hillel. Okay, let's go. We've got divorce.
These are the things for which no oath is imposed: slaves, legal documents, land, and consecrated property. Neither is there twofold payment, nor fourfold, nor fivefold payment. An unpaid shomer does not swear; a paid shomer does not pay. Rebbe Shimon says concerning consecrated things for which one is responsible, an oath is imposed, but concerning those for which one is not responsible, no oath is imposed. Reb Meir says some things are attached to the ground but are not treated as land, but the sages do not concur with him. How so? If one claims, I have delivered to you 10 fruit-laden vines, and the other says there were only 5, Reb Meir has him liable to an oath, and the comments say anything attached to the ground is treated as land. There is no oath except for in regard to something that's defined by measure, weight, or number. How so? If one claims, I delivered to you a full house, or I delivered to you a full purse, and the other one says, I do not know, but whatever you put down, you are taking, he is exempt. If this one says up to the projecting beam, and this one says up to the window, he is liable. If one lends another on security, and the security was lost, if he says to him, I lent you a seller on it, and it was worth a shekel, and the other one says, not so, you lent me a seller on it, and it was worth a seller, he is exempt. But if he says, I lent you a seller on it, and it was worth a shekel, and the other one says, not so, you lent me a seller on it, and it was worth 3 dinars, he is liable. If he says to him, you lent me a seller on it, and it was worth 2, and the other one says, not so, I lent you a seller, and it was worth only a seller, he is exempt. But if he says that you lent me a seller on it, and it was worth 2, and the other one says, not so, I lent you a seller on it, and it was worth 5 dinars, he is liable. Now who swears? The one who had the doorpost, the deposit, lest this one swear and the other one produce for the deposit. Okay.
Sanhedrin, Yud Base. There some long ones today.
3 kings and 4 commoners have no share in the world to come. The 3 kings are Ravim, Achav, and Menashe. Rabbi Yehuda said Menashe has a share in the world to come, as it is stated, and he prayed to him, and he allowed himself to be entreated and heard his plea, and he returned him to Jerusalem, to his kingdom. They said to him, he returned to his kingdom, but not to the world to come. The 4 commoners are Bilam, Dog, Akbipol, and Gehazi. The generations of the flood have no share in the world to come, nor they will stand in judgment, as it is stated, my spirit shall not contend evermore concerning man, neither judgment nor spirit. The generation of the dispersal has no share in the world to come, as it is stated, and Hashem dispersed them from across the face of the whole earth. Hashem dispersed them in the world, and from there Hashem scattered them from the whole world to come. The people of Sodom have no share in the world to come, as it is stated. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and sinful toward Hashem, exceedingly wicked in this world and sinful in the world to come. However, they will stand for judgment. From Nehemiah says, neither these nor those who will stand for judgment, as it is stated. Therefore, the wicked shall not stand for judgment, nor the sinful be in the congregation of the righteous. Therefore, the wicked shall not stand for judgment. This is the generation of the flood, nor the sinful in the congregation of the righteous. These are the people of Sodom. They said to him, they shall not stand in the congregation of the righteous, but thou stand in the congregation of the sinful. The spies have no share in the world to come, as it is stated, and the men who brought out an evil report about the land died in a plague before Hashem. They died in this world and in a plague in the world to come. The generation of the wilderness has no share in the world to come, and they will not stand for judgment, as it is stated, in this wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eduyos says concerning them, it is stated, gather to me my devout ones, those who seal the covenant with me by sacrifice. The congregation of Korah is not destined to arise, as it is stated, and the land covered them over in this world, and they were lost forever amidst the congregation in the world to come. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eduyos says concerning them, it is stated, Hashem kills and brings to life, he lowers into the grave and brings up. The 10 tribes are not destined to return, as it is stated, and he sent them forth to another land as of this day. This is the day goes never to return, so they go never to return. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer said, just as the day darkens and then becomes light, so the 10 tribes from whom it became dark shall have a future that becomes light for them. The people of the apostate town have no share in the world to come. As it is stated, they went out wicked men from your midst, and they led astray the inhabitants of the trees, the town. They are not beheaded unless those who led them astray are from the town, and that the tribe, unless the majority of the town has been led astray, and unless they have been led astray by men. If they were led astray by women or children, and only a minority was led astray, if those leading them astray were from outside the town, they are treated as individuals. They require 2 witnesses and a warning for each one. And this is the stringency of the individual over multitude individual are stoned. Therefore, their property is stated, and multitude are beheaded. Therefore, their property is forfeit.
Okay. Cool. I'll become a sign.
Baseline. Although he prays for him, he is not forgiven for it until he seeks forgiveness from him. That is said, but now returns the wife. Now, where do we know from that? Where we know that from the one who forgives should not be cruel. It is said, and Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech. If one says, blind my eye, cut off my hand, break my leg, he is liable. On condition to be exempt, he is liable. Tear my clothes, break my jug, he is liable. On condition to be exempt, he is exempt. Do this to so and so on condition that you be exempt. He is liable whether it is against the body or against his property. If one steals a cow and becomes impregnated while with him, and it calves, I said that wrong. If one steals a cow and it becomes impregnated while with him, and it calves or with it for you, and it becomes laden with wool while with him, and he shares it, he pays at the time of the robbery. This is the general rule. All robbers pay at the time of the robbery. If one steals an animal and ages or slaves, or slaves at their age, and he pays for it at the time of the robbery. Meir says in the case of slaves, he may say to him, here is your property before you. If he steals a corn and it cracks, fruit and rots and wine and sours, he pays for the time of the robbery. He steals a corn and becomes disqualified, truma, and it becomes ritually contaminated. Comments and in his possession on Pesach, or an animal and his use of transgression, or becomes disqualified for the altar, it is condemned to be stoned. He may say to them, here is your property before you.
Right. So the difference being, is there actually a visible change that has happened to the object that he stole? So things that have happened, like on a spiritual level, it became puzzle, it became you can't see any change, but it became tame or whatever. So there, the robber can just give back the original item and say, here it is. If it's something that actually broke, then he has to pay for it at the time of the theft. Okay.
We say Aleph Dalet. If they read the Megillah during the first Adar and an extra month of Adar was added to the year, they must read it again on the second Adar. There is no difference between the first Adar and the second Adar except as regards the reading of the Megillah and the giving of gifts to the poor. There is no difference between the laws applying to a holiday and those applying to Sabbath except to the laws applying to food. There is no difference between the laws applying to the Sabbath and those applying to Yom Kippur except that deliberate desecration of one is punishable by man and the deliberate desecration of the other is punishable by Karas. There is no difference between forbidden by vow to have any benefit from someone else and one forbidden by vow to receive food from him except for setting food on his property and utensils with which people do not prepare food. There is no difference between vow offerings and vow offerings.
Yes, sir. Karen, yes.
There's no difference between vow offerings and gift offerings except that concerning vows, one is responsible for the security, but concerning gifts, one is not responsible for their security. There is no difference.
That's it. We're done.
Okay, and we are on to the 9. Oh,
done.
yeah, okay. Hey,
Rav.
love, okay. Bad Shammai says one should not sell olives except to a chaver. Bad Hill says also the one who tithes. But the pious of Beit Hillel used to act in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai. No, two people harvested their vineyards into one wine press. One tithes and the other one does not tithe. The one who tithes his, and his part is wherever it is. If two persons rented a field as sharecroppers or inherited or became partners, he can say, "You take the wheat which is in this place, and I shall take the wheat which is in that place." Place you what's this? You the wine in this place, and I the wine in that place. But he may not say to him, "You take the wheat, I the barley. You take the wine, and I shall take the oil."
Right, because splitting something is done half of the same produce. But if you say I'll take the wine, you take the oil, then you're already bartering with produce that's unmastered. So what we're trying to do is save the guy who's careful about his masters from having to take master both on his and on the other guys.
Hey, you're done. Regarding a bowl or coil of reed grass that were placed over the mouth of a barrel, if one plastered the sides, it is not protected. The utensils until it plasters above them and below them. And the same is true for a woman's cloth. If the cover of a papyrus or of leather or one tied it with a cord, then if one plastered the sides, it is protected the utensil. Regarding a barrel that peeled and its pitch remains intact, and similarly containers of pitch brine sealed with gypsum and at the rim, Rabbi Yehuda says they do not protect, but the sages say protect. If a barrel developed a hole in the sediments blocked it, they have protected it. If one plugged a hole with a vine, it does not protect it until one plasters the sides. If there were two vines, they do not protect until one plasters the sides and between one vine and the other. Regarding a board that was placed over the mouth of an onion, if one of an oven. Yeah, one places the sides, it protects. If there were two boards that do not protect until one plasters the sides in between one board and the other, if one joined them with sinum or with shugman, one need not apply plaster in its middle. When
Okay,
older,
done.
was it? No, three.
Yeah, yep. And I'm off.
Okay, have a great
Wonderful
Shabbos.
Shabbos. We'll see you, Mitzvah Hashem, on Sunday morning.